Welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
And this is Coach's Corner. We got a few topics to talk about today.
We do. Just a couple of things that came across our minds this week.
Well, one of them is a question that we get asked all the time when we see it in the Facebook group. And I think the content, the answer that you kind of threw my way was like, I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I love that. We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
We've also got one that is, basically, I'll just give a little bit of more of a teaser here. That is like, well, how many should I send in? How many should I test? How many should I replenish with, right? There's a few things behind that we'll share with you. And then also, like, how do I know how to respond to certain events in the business? You can create SOPs or standard operating procedures, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we want to start off with the topic we kind of touched on in a previous episode, which is the Chinese proverb that goes something like this. And I'm probably going to really butcher this, but when you hear something, you'll forget it. When you see something, you'll remember it. But when you do something,
you'll understand it. Yeah.
And we see this a lot in this space, right? And I love the idea that a lot of people here in this space are continual learners.
And then you're talking about this space being the community.
That we're in, yeah. And we're all, as we say, lifelong learners, right?
A lot of us really are. Yeah, we enjoy learning all the time.
So my case here is that the learning part of it goes beyond just understanding it conceptually. I read a book on that.
Right.
I saw someone do it. I understand we kind of teased this in a previous episode as well. I understand how to swing a golf club.
Yes.
But until you actually go swing the golf club, you don't have an appreciation for it, right?
Being someone who was over 30 the first time she swung a golf club, there was nothing in my life. I understood what I was supposed to do, but my body did not. I had to train my body and my brain to do what it needed to do. It was not comfortable in the beginning at all.
We also talked about riding a bicycle. Right. Like you understand that it takes balance, and you know that you turn the wheel to turn and you crank the pedals to go faster, and you have, handles for the brakes, or
all the mechanics are there.
You understand it. But until you actually get on the bike and execute, it's different. Same thing like driving a car. We've used the car analogy before.
We have.
Right. I remember as a kid, I would sit in the front seat and turn the wheel like this and tell my mom, is this how you drive? This is how you drive, right?
Yes.
Going back and forth. Moving the steering wheel back and forth, because that's what it seems like.
That's what it seems like.
But it's completely different when all of a sudden you're in control of the power and the braking and the signaling and all the million things that you have to keep track of while you're actually doing it.
And control is exactly the issue in that situation, right? Because you put your foot on the gas and you don't know how much gas to give it. And if you give it too little, it will struggle. If you give it too much, it'll take off on you and you'll lose control. So
same thing with the pressure on the brake.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You don't just put on the brake because everyone in the car will go
sending through the windshield.
Go against their seatbelt, right?
Right.
Okay.
Of course, their seatbelt. Yes. always wear seatbelt.
So the idea here is that you can't be a backseat driver.
Right.
You have to actually take the wheel, right? And this, for me, this applies to the sourcing process.
Yes.
It is one thing to understand it and to say, oh, yes, I understand that I just very much simplified, buy low and sell high. Right? But how do you find those items? Well, you go to the store and you inspect things on the shelf, or you browse a website online. Yes, that is true. Absolutely right. But until you actually go through it, from step one or from step A to step Z, you don't have a true appreciation for it. And you can't say, I believe, you can't say that you really understand it until you get in there and truly have learned it, until you get in there and go all the way from step A to step Z, and you're in control.
That's right. And do it a few times. It takes a little bit of practice to perfect that. And for you, it's going to be a different process than it is for anybody else. So this is something that we also think that should be learned before you have someone else do it for you, just so you are clear about what you're expecting and what you want to happen when somebody is doing that for you. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So sourcing it, this is the do it before you delegate it, right? You have to have a good understanding of that before you hire someone on who's going to go do that for you, and try to simplify it. And I love that what we've done, what you've done, I give you the credit on this with that 3-step check.
People give me way too much credit, but thank you.
Yeah, basically make this a yes or no answer, right? As opposed to, well, sometimes, maybe, if you look at it here, if you consider this, blah, blah, blah. Let's just make it as black and white, ones and zeros as we can make it.
Right. So in creating that, we worked on this together, but in creating that, the purpose was that we wanted for people who are just beginning to be able to have some place to go and some guidelines to work within until they get more experience and can, make their own rules. This will, be a low risk and an easy decision for them to make. But it also, for us, it's really, really great to have someone else look through our lists for us of ASINs that we want to maybe test. We want someone else to go and find the source for that, but we don't want them making any decisions. So we give them all yes or no questions. And that's what the 3-step check came from, was trying to make it so that someone who is not me can make decisions for my business that are black and white, that you can't mess it up by making a judgment call. So that was kind of where that came from.
That's key. In the judgment call, this is the joy of being an owner operator of your business, is you get to make those judgment calls.
That's right.
But you don't want necessarily an employee in your business at this stage making a judgment call unless they've proven themselves,
right? Not until you have a lot of experience and trust with that person would you want them making judgment calls, and that's just the development of employees as that goes. But that's kind of where it came from, just black and white, yes or no's. If you send me back everything that says yes to all 3 of those 3-step checks, and you have a reputable source, then I want to see that one. Anything that doesn't pass all of that, I don't want to see.
Right.
So it's just a task, doing the task that I would have been doing, but having someone else do it for me.
And I think this is what sometimes causes confusion in our community is we make judgment calls all the time.
We do.
Right?
Yes.
We say, I know maybe
all of us do.
This does or doesn't pass the 3-step check, but I'm going to override that.
Right, because I have some experience and I have seen this before, and I can make that call.
And this is why if you see a question asked in the MST community, you'll get 100 different answers, because we're all making that judgment call, right?
Right.
Potentially.
And that's a good point too. And I think we've mentioned this before. We have a community where you can get all kinds of different advice from all kinds of different experiences. All any of us do is share what's worked with us. So there aren't any right or wrong answers. There are a lot of options that you can take a look at and make your own decision. And that's what I think is really, really great about everybody sharing. There are no rights and wrongs or, breaking rules. You make your own rules. You decide what goes on in your business. And you have a lot of input to help you make those decisions from experienced people.
Yes. Real quick, my eyes are up here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, he moved the camera on me and I forgot where to look. I apologize. Hello, everyone. I'm here.
Thanks for humoring me on that.
It was quite humorous. Yes.
Well, the point there is that you are running your own business and you get to make those decisions. But when you have outsourced a portion of your business, you want someone to probably check with you before making a judgment call, unless, again, you've developed a good relationship, good rapport. You've got trust with that person, whether it's your prep center, your sourcer, your shopper, whatever it is.
Yeah, regardless of whether they have experience or not, whether they've worked with someone already and been trained in some way, you don't know that they're trained in the way that you would do your business.
Right. And as a new person in this business, when you're just starting out, the biggest hurdle that you face is sourcing items, right?
Right.
Looking through
finding items to test.
And that bridge, you have to cross it, regardless of how to cross the bridge. The path that needs to be taken. And you could explain to someone how to get from the side of the bridge to the other side of the bridge.
Right. Give directions all day long.
You could absolutely.
The other side of the bridge is right that way.
Yes. And be careful in the middle. There's a little hole.
Yes.
Sidestep
I've seen people fall in the hole over there.
Yes. Right. We've all seen this, but you are the one who still has to cross the bridge yourself, ultimately.
To get to the other side, you have to cross the bridge.
And that's the time investment. And that's the, the brain, the learning that you have to go through.
Yes.
I'm convinced anyway. I had to go through it. You had to go through
Yes.
it. All of our clients have had to go through it. Maybe there's some people who come into this business and magically can pick things out, but for most of us,
I haven't met any of them.
Yeah, not yet anyway. For most of us, we have to cross that bridge.
I've met some pretty impressive ones from pretty quick movers that worked with them.
Yes.
But I haven't met anybody who didn't have to get to the other side of the bridge.
Yeah. And it takes time. We've said this before, but, allow some grace for yourself, for whoever you might be working with in the business. Give yourself a little bit of slack.
Yes.
We don't see people come in and go, oh, I figured it out in 15 minutes. Right. It takes some time, some repetition, some burning in, some experimentation, some failures, right? You have to go through those failures. That just reminds me of something else I wanted to bring up. Not necessarily, I didn't write it down to talk about on this show, but, how do I say this?
You're scaring me. I don't know.
This is a little bit off the cuff, but I can't get it. I can't formulate it, but it's like this avoiding failure doesn't equal success.
That's correct.
Right?
Absolutely agree with that statement.
Yeah, I think I finally got it out in the right way. Avoiding failure doesn't equal success. And we all have to have some of those failures along the way because that is what you're going to learn from. And that will help you build a great foundation for success. And that applies in the sourcing space too.
That's right.
Right? There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of layered learning that happens as you're going through that sourcing process. When you're testing, you're like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't notice that when I originally decided I was going to test this.
That's a good point because we don't know what we don't know, right? And that's why we start with a few basic general guidelines and then we get those worked out and then we add to it. We don't just go to, 12th grade when we're 5 years old.
Right.
We just don't do it.
Right.
We go layer by layer, step by step. And then you can start moving pretty quickly once you get some of that foundation down, but give yourself some time to build the next step and then build the next step and get that down before you put another step on there. So you get all the steps in there.
Yes.
And then it becomes pretty easy.
Right. But that takes time.
It does take time.
At least it takes repetitions. It takes cycles, right?
It takes cycles.
That feedback loop we talk about. The more times you get that feedback loop in a shorter amount of time, that's how fast basically you can build this business. But you have to go through the whole cycle.
Right. The faster you can go through cycles, the faster you can build your business. I think that's pretty universally true. Of course, you're getting our opinion and our advice here, and it's just one of the many, many pieces of advice that are out there. But these are things that have worked for us and people that we've worked with. So yeah, I like the analogy of getting to the other side of the bridge.
Okay, good.
And I like not failing is not equal to success.
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
You got to step out a little bit and take a few, bumps.
You might have to take a punch or two here and there.
Yeah. But you'll be way better for it, right? As opposed to just standing as an observer. Okay. Good. Did we beat
I think we beat that one to death. Let's try the next one. See if we can beat that one up.
Okay. So this is actually a good one. We get this question and we see it all the time. This is, well, how many should I test?
How many should I test?
Or how many should I replenish?
That's a bigger question. Yeah. Because, we already talked about how many tests. I say 3 to 5. You say 4 to 6. Different people will say different things. You'll get a routine. You're not going to go wrong there, especially if you have somebody that you're working with and you have a certain amount of capital and you're going to make your decision there. But how many do I replenish? Okay, so it passed the test. Great. I'm going to replenish that item. So how many do I replenish?
This is a good one. Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. How many?
I'm taking your response or the way you framed it to me because I think this is awesome. I'm paraphrasing, but if it makes me cringe a little bit when I think about potentially not getting my money back because I think I'm potentially buying too much, that's usually my first sign that I'm buying too much.
Yes.
Right?
Consider that feeling.
Because even though it passed your test that first time, doesn't mean it'll pass the test the next time. And you sure enough might go get a great deal on 24 or 48 units. You send it in and then Amazon shows up that same day.
Yeah, for half of your break-even price.
Where basically the same price you paid for it. You're not going to, it's going to be really tough to make money. You don't know how long you might have to wait them out. And so now you've got this capital that is in inventory that's either on the way or sitting in the warehouse.
Potentially getting storage fees.
Right, because we are doing everything that we can to stack the deck in our favor. Remember, we're doing the 3-step check. We're finding out what our break even is. We're finding out where the average low price is. We're doing everything that we can to ensure success. But none of those things are a guarantee that we're going to be continually successful with that item over and over again.
So may I say also that it does make a difference in how spread your capital is. If you spread over, we've said this a bunch of times, if you spread over 10 ASINs and something happens to one of those ASINs, that's kind of hurt. If you spread over 100 ASINs and something happens to one, that's not going to hurt nearly as bad. You're not going to cringe as much when something happens. So consider that feeling of how hard you want to fall if you fall. Because anything can happen. Keep that in mind. We've done everything we can to stay safe, but the biggest thing you can do to stay safe and keep your risk low is to spread it across many ASINs, as Jim Cockrum calls it, inch deep, mile wide when it comes to ASINs. Don't go deep on one ASIN. Go a little bit on several ASINs.
Yeah, this is a good, I think, time to bring up low, low, high, which is that this is a Robinism, Robin Joyism. So this is low barrier to entry or low cost, low risk, and a high chance for success. Notice that none of them said guaranteed. None. Right? Said for sure low price, for sure no risk, and for sure success. Right. But we are stacking the deck as much in our favor as we can. But in terms of the number or the price of that item, or how many should I send in, I love the balancing act that you're talking about. So if I have 20 ASINs in my stable at this point, I want to try and balance out the number, spread the risk across all of those. If I'm putting 40% of my spend in one of those ASINs, that's probably too much, even if that's my most profitable ASIN today.
Even if that's your most profitable ASIN today, because anything can happen to any ASIN. And over and over and over, we get the call that says, oh, this was my best ASIN. And for whatever reason, Amazon shut it down and I have to pull my inventory. And I had, 600 items in there. And, that's probably exaggeration. Very many have 600, but 60 items at $50 a piece. And that's going to really, really cost me. So this can happen if that were spread over a whole bunch of ASINs and in that $50 60 times wasn't a large percentage of your capital. You probably will handle that just fine. But if it's a large percentage of your capital, if you're testing your first few ASINs and you have one or two on your replens list that have passed, and you've got some tests in there, and you're looking at, okay, I have $2,000 for inventory this week, and I can put that into tests along with my 2 replens. But I'm looking at this ASIN that looks really good. The buy cost to me is $200. That's 10% of my capital for this week for one, and I need to buy 3 to do a test. That's going to make me cringe a little. That's that feeling that's going to make you think twice. Now, it doesn't mean you can't make the decision to do it. Just consider that that's a large percentage of your capital at that moment. And you may want to wait a little bit longer to go into those higher priced or deeper items, meaning more quantity.
And just to clarify, you said you only had 2 or 3 items on your list, but you have $2,000. That doesn't mean you need to spend all $2,000.
True.
Right. We are still being reasonably conservative in the amount of items that we're sending in per ASIN. We don't, just because we have that amount of money doesn't need to mean we need to spend it all. In fact, I like the divide up that money over 6 weeks and do an equal spend every week for 6 weeks.
I like that too.
So that you start,
or even 8 weeks.
So that you start getting some of that money, the capital, the original investment plus your profit back.
Yes.
Before you run out of your seed money to start that you're using to replenish and fund your tests.
Right. Because you don't want to have this big gap where you can't do anything because you're waiting for your money to come back. Because guess what happens when you have a big gap? You have to start
all over. It's like you lose momentum. We talked about this
you need to keep that momentum going.
In another conversation where we're in danger of anytime we take 2 or 3 weeks off, that's putting distance between that business, the business processes, the sourcing, the doing all the things that we do on a daily basis, and where we are today. And it's fairly easy, I think, to become disengaged or potentially become disengaged when that happens. So that's another reason I like the consistency. Consistency in this business is where it's at.
I think it's the key thing. Consistency in everything, diversity in everything. So when I say diversity, consistency, everything, do once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever you do it every time, at least that much. Diversity, diversify your ASINs. Then as you grow, diversify your brands in case something happened to that brand. Diversify your categories in case something happened to that category. Diversify even your strategies at a certain point. We think first of all, consistency is key. And the second key is diversity in whatever ways you can. So,
yes. In fact, as you do this more and more in the replens model, you get experience on the platform. You get experience in the space if you're new to this type of business. And once you do gain that level of experience, then you can start integrating other strategies that can provide more stability, a better foundation for your business than just doing replens alone, which is a fine business model. But there are ways that you can shore that up.
Right.
Okay.
But you can add to that, like we've done. We have a replens business, and then we've also done what they're calling branded bundles now. So we've been doing that for a while as well. So we've started to diversify, and even some other strategies that we have been trying. We've got several things going on right now. Anyway, besides that,
the point is you can diversify your strategies too.
That's the point.
Okay, one more thing that makes me think of how many should I replenish or how many should I test is if it makes you cringe a little bit that you might have to give a refund on one of those items, that's probably a good indicator that you're spending too much on that particular ASIN or that particular item.
That you should at least consider that you might want to wait a little bit more. So let's put it this way, Brian. What if I gave you $10 and then I asked you to give me $1 every day? I'm making this up as I go.
Okay.
And I ask you to give me $1 a day, right?
Yep.
Then that would be okay for the first couple dollars, but then you're like, I'm getting down to the bottom. But what if I gave you $1,000 and asked you to give me $1 every day?
Okay.
That wouldn't hurt so bad, right?
Right.
So if I have inventory in that costs me a lot of my capital, am I getting too far off here?
No, you're just not looking at the camera.
I'm looking at the camera again, sorry. But if it costs a large percentage of my capital, then it's going to hurt a little if somebody wants a refund on that. And I'm going to want to, really dig into that. And that can be time spent that, doesn't go anywhere for you. So it's just another way to look at it.
And we believe that refunds are part of doing business.
We do. Yes.
And we have always, since the day we started out in this, we've taken, I'll call it the Nordstrom approach.
Yes.
Which is like, absolutely, we will give you refunds because we are about customer service.
Yes.
And that means that doesn't mean it always felt good. Let me just be clear on that.
Not always.
There were times I was like, why do they want a refund? I feel like I'm getting, gypped on something or whatever. And that was hard for me to reconcile for about 2 days because you kept me with a level head and you said, remember, this is a long-term business. We're not just doing this for 3 weeks, 3 months, or even 3 years. Right. This is a long-term business venture for us. And the way we want to approach this, whether it's on Amazon or any other platform or even in a store, is that we're about customer service, not about what we sell. It's about the service. It's about the experience.
Exactly. Right? And I think what we talked about early on was we're building a multi-million-dollar business.
Yes.
And we're not going to let a $20 refund impact that.
Right. Even $100 refund in that.
Even $100
now,
refund.
If I had $100 refund in my first 2 months, I would be a little concerned about that, which is why.
Exactly what we were just describing.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All right. So
anything else on that? Good on there?
I think so.
Okay, good. Well, the last question is, we get this a lot. It's a reactive question that we get a lot. Oh, this happened to me.
Right.
I got this item, the listing got shut down, or this item's not selling anymore, or any number of reasons that I might have to go from plan A to plan B or
Right.
plan C or plan D.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So let's say that scenario we were talking about before, where you send in a test and you've got 4 items in there on that ASIN. They just got there, and here comes Amazon, and they're going to sell it for half of what your selling price was. Now, are they going to stay there? We don't know. We're going to test for about 30 to 45 days. If they're still there, what do I do? I can't just, if I recall it, I mean, I could recall it, or I could lower my price, but I'm going to lose money. What do I do there?
Right.
So
what we're trying to do is not that dissimilar from the refunds, is have an approach that works for us as 9 times out of 10, whatever, or 10 times out of 10. But the approach is predefined.
That's the key.
So we're not clouded by emotion,
right?
And potentially make a bad call, a bad judgment on how we're going to handle that situation. So this is part of the SOP, or your standard operating procedures for us. We already know when something like that happens, how we are going to respond to that. We look up in our book, Amazon
exit strategies is what we call it.
Exit strategies. So what do we do for exit strategy when situation A happens? We flip open our SOP and we say, if Amazon shows up and we're 45 days in and we have no sales, then execute plan B.
Right.
Plan B could be any number of things.
Could be any number of things.
It could be recall, repurpose, resell on another platform,
Right. Our first place to go is usually to get it listed on every platform that we can and see how quickly we can move it. But then sometimes that doesn't work, and we don't want it to sit there too long, knowing we're not going to make any money on it. So, other strategies might be, lowering the price as much as we need to get it sold, so we get most of our capital back. That's usually the easiest strategy. It takes the least manpower and effort and thought process. But that sometimes doesn't work for us either. And sometimes we recall it and we give it away as Christmas gifts, or donate it to a shelter,
or take it back to where we bought it from, refund, repackage it into a different configuration. Right, there are a lot of, the point here is that we've learned this through many cycles and many iterations. So I don't think it's fair to say, well, just define it in advance and then make that decision, right? You're going to have gone through this a few times. I say, can you define it in advance? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you can't change it as well.
Right. You will be more comfortable with your SOPs. As you use them, you will find what tweaks you need to make to those. And that'll make it easier next time. You have to look at that, and the next time. And pretty soon you're going to be able to just hand that to someone else to do that work for you.
Why might you be doing that?
Because any number of reasons, but one of them might be that I want to go on a vacation. I don't do this. I don't have my own business and control my own life, so I can never go on vacation.
Right.
I want to go on vacation sometimes.
It is nice to be able to give someone the decision tree and say, if this happens, follow this process. Right. And this is how then you can begin to outsource your business as well. And you gain trust in the people that you're working with. But in addition to vacation.
What else might cause that?
Well, maybe I got into a car accident or I broke my leg, or, I'm incapacitated for some reason for an extended period of time. Unexpected things do happen. We were talking about this one the other day.
Yeah, we can plan for vacation, but not for a car accident.
Right. And you can't plan for a death in the family either.
Right.
Sometimes that will take you out from, hits you from left field. Usually that's what happens. And you need to drop everything and go be with your loved ones.
Yes.
Right. But you also don't want your business to suffer necessarily. And so by creating these SOPs and decision trees, whatever, that you can actually hand that to someone and say, I'm going to be gone. I don't know how long I'm going to be gone, but here you go. Can you take care of this for me while I'm gone?
Right. And it's not usually that simple, but it's going to be a lot easier to ask someone to help you if you have those things written down.
Right. And
have some sort of idea how that would be run.
The joy of this business is, even if you were on vacation or away for an extended period of time, that It's usually just a few minutes per day. You can log in and just, make sure everything is operating as it should. And if something needs attention, then you can call on someone.
Yes.
To help do that for you.
Eventually you get outsourced and you can, what we like to see with people we're working with, once they get, their replens list built up a little bit, 75 or 100 ASINs, we like to see them get a little bit outsourced so that they can add another strategy, go to the next point in the pyramid that they want to go to. And if they get outsourced on the replens business, that's going to continue to keep the cash flow going so they can experiment with some other strategies that might be a little bit higher risk or a little bit longer return than the replens business.
Oh, this is interesting. We were talking about this last night, and
we were right.
You want to jump into it a little bit?
Sure.
So we were
Just
talking
a little bit.
So I don't know if anyone ever goes to Las Vegas. You ever play like the blackjack tables? It used to be back in the old days. There were dollar tables. You could go play a hand of blackjack for $1, and you could get a lot of hands. No, well, you might be able to at certain places, but last time we were there, we didn't see any of those. Right. And then like the minimum went up to like $5, and most places now is $25 like a hand.
Really? Is it really?
I mean, you might be able to find a $10 table, but yeah, I mean, it can be really expensive. I felt, and I'm not even in the high roller section, right?
Right. Yeah, where it's like $100 a hand. And
right. But replens is like that $1 or $5 table. You can come in for fairly low stakes, relatively low stakes, right? The low cost. And you can play the game of replens and you can be successful.
Right.
Right.
Very low risk.
Yes.
Very low investment, comparatively speaking. High chance for success in that game. But the next point on the pyramid, I know next for us was branded bundles. That's a much longer startup time, a much more cash up front kind of business. The experimentation doesn't necessarily, you can't make it protect your capital like you did before. There are ways to make good judgment calls on it. And absolutely.
It's still a great model.
Yeah, it is still a great model.
But the risk is a little bit higher.
Yes.
The low cost is a little bit less low, right? A little bit higher.
But you can do that because you've already built some cash and you have some cash flowing in your replens business. And that's why this community usually encourages people to start with the replens business.
Yeah.
And then build onto that, those next steps after you have some experience about how the platform works, about what can happen, those kinds of things before you kind of dive into those things that are longer startup time, a little bit more capital required up front. But they can be very, very much worth it. Just with no experience at all, is going to be a lot riskier.
Right. And then there's the other model, which is I would call the true private label. So you are an inventor or something like that, where you have a design of something, you're having it manufactured to your specifications. You're getting it from China. It's coming over on a boat in a container. Right. This to me is like the high roller room. Right?
Yes. And we've worked with some people who do this and are very successful at it.
Yes.
It can be done.
It's super exciting.
It's super exciting when it works.
Yes. But we like to say, like, work your way up to that so that you've got some stability and you've got that, back in the replenishment quantities. If it makes you cringe a little bit about the amount of money that you're putting into that, then that's probably a good indication
you're
not quite ready for that.
Feeling,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why in this community, we encourage everyone to start with replens. It is absolutely low risk, low barrier to entry, high chance for success. Love it.
Love it.
All right. And what happens if one of your ASINs goes bad? What solves that problem?
More ASINs.
More ASINs?
More ASINs.
Let's go get some more ASINs.
Let's go get some more ASINs.
I think that's what we're going to do tonight.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us today on Silent Sales Machine Radio. As we like to do once a week or so around here, I bring on my good friend, Mr. Jeff Schick of jeffschick.com, just like the razor. He's always got some great legal insights and some Amazon policy insights for us. What have you got for us this week, Jeff?
Well, we have an interesting one. So over the last week or two, we've gotten a couple emails from sellers, and they're saying, help, my account health rating has gone down and nothing on my account health dashboard has changed. And so they're thinking that something's wrong and they're sounding the alarm and they're wondering what can they do to fix it. So the purpose of this episode is to explain, well, what is the account health rating? How does Amazon come up with that number, which is between 0 and 1,000? And why is it going down when you're doing nothing wrong? So I guess I'll jump right into it. For those of you who may not know, the account health rating is Amazon's numeric score on the account health dashboard. Now, it's currently only in the United States. I might have rolled out to Canada recently. I can't remember if it did or not, but it's only for sure it's in the United States. It has not made it to Europe yet. And it's a score between 0 and 1,000. Between 0 and 99, an account is at risk of deactivation within 72 hours or 7 days, depending on if you have account health assurance. Between 100 and 199, your account will have a yellow banner saying your account is at risk. Please fix these violations to prevent further disruption. And between 200 and 1,000, you're healthy. Now, where sellers are concerned is that, their scores are going down and they're not getting violations. So normally violations range on Amazon from between 2 and 8 points. So maybe an IP claim might be 8 points or 10 points, just depends on what the investigator assigns to it. And so their ratings maybe goes from a 245 to a 243, and yet they have no violations on their dashboard. They're saying, why is this happening? So I think it's important to understand what causes that rating and understand why it might be going down. So Jim, you and I have talked before when they first rolled it out. And it's for those who don't remember, on that episode, Amazon had released the formula, and it still is on Seller Central. You have to dig pretty deep to find it. But basically, for those who don't remember, it's a 180-day rolling average where you receive 4 points for every 200 orders. So for every 200 orders that you have that don't have a problem, you'll receive 4 points on your score. So if you imagine in the last 180 days, and I should also preface it that everyone starts at 200. So if in the last 180 days, which is 6 months, you sold 200 items exactly, you would have, and you had no IP claims and no other issues, you'd have a 204. Just, simple math, 4 points, 200 orders, 180 days. So for now, why this matters, and I keep focusing on this 180 days, is that 180 days ago, we were in the middle of Q4. So that's mid-October. We're in the height of Christmas shopping. People are buying like crazy on your Amazon store. And so naturally, we've got sort of like a bell curve distribution where we had a ton of orders in this Q4 period. And now we're on the tail end of it where orders taper back down to normal. So if you don't have a constant order volume throughout the year, and you're one of I think 80, they say 80% of Amazon sellers that do arbitrage make 80% of their revenue in Q4. That means 20% of your revenue comes from the other months, 80% comes from Q4. Well, we are now dead middle Q4, October, November, and December is Q4. We're in the middle of October. We're moving into November. So as we move further away from that point, those orders are falling off the calculation. So if you did 1,000 orders in Q4, you would have, 200 times 5, or for 200 1,000 divided by 200 would be 5 times 4, which is 20 points.
So
You'd
you
have
took a 20 point increase on your score.
20 point increase back then.
Great Q4.
Great Q4. Now you're going to be sloping down, especially if you don't have 1,000 orders now.
Right.
So you're going to be going down from a 220 down to a 200 because that's baseline, even though nothing went wrong. You didn't get IP claims. You don't have order defects. You don't have A to Z claims. You don't have product condition issues. You got nothing there negative. It's just natural. So that's the purpose. It's nothing.
To restate it as simply as possible, Jeff, as I'm hearing you talk, is if you're shipping fewer units, your account health could slide. If you're shipping fewer now than you used to a few months ago, your account health could slide, but just a little bit. It's not going to bury you. It's going to kind of take you back down to where you were before you had the spike.
Correct. And on the bright side, something to look forward to. Next Q4, you're going to start seeing it going back up again. So
sure. Thankfully, most of our replens sellers report that, yes, absolutely, we all benefit from a great December and November. But if we're selling those boring everyday items, like most listeners in our community are the replens, this doesn't hit you quite as much, where we see quite often, February, March, or April could be the best month of the year for some of our replen sellers. But still, when you have those months that are a big spike and your account health swings up, just know that as the volume slows, your account health could drop. And there's no reason to freak out and call Jeff at 3 a.m. panicked.
Right. Yeah. It's just going down. Natural attrition, basically. It's going down. It's not that you did anything wrong, and Amazon's not going to penalize you for it because, remember that baseline is 200. So even if you went all the way down to 200, you're still healthy.
That makes sense. Yeah. You're just as healthy at 201, although you may be a little nervous. as you are at 999, as far as from Amazon's vantage point, right?
Correct.
Assuming
Absolutely,
201's your
yes.
basement. You don't want to drop 20 points from there, obviously, but there's no additional benefits. You don't get an extra, Christmas turkey from Bezos if you're over 700 at the end of the year, nothing like that. So you're all good over 200. Beautiful. That's a great overview of the account health score and what to be looking out for. All right, man. It's great hanging out with you. Appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. If people want more information,
they can sign up with us, reach out to me. You guys can shoot us an email anytime. We're happy to help. Jeff@jeffschick.com is our team's email. And then also our website, jeffschick.com, where we've got our monthly retainer. And it, is extremely comprehensive. You get unlimited consultations with me and my team. And we help you look out for things like your account health so that if it is going down, we help you figure out why. And if there's anything that needs to be done, we'll help you take care of it. And there's no extra charge for it.
Yeah. So, and an actual real live lawyer on your side that understands Amazon legal and policy. So great job, man. Appreciate all the good work you're doing for our community. And we'll do this again real soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.